The man who was about to freeze to death, in order to survive, used a dagger to cut the bullet in half. But who would have thought that what poured out from inside was just a few drops of black water? Helpless Jack could only pick up another one. He was very clear that, if this was the case for the next ones, then he would have nowhere to be buried. Fortunately, Jack was very lucky. There was no water in this bullet. He shivered and poured out the gunpowder. Then he picked up the nearby twigs, broke them into small sections, and put them on it. Immediately after, Jack took out another bullet again. He used the dagger to keep tapping on the back of the bullet, but he had already been shivering from the cold and couldn't focus at all. The soaked Jack had to change the method. He first fixed the bullet with one hand, and then placed the dagger horizontally at the back. Then he picked up the stone and kept hitting the dagger. Fortunately, all efforts paid off just when he was about to freeze to death. He finally managed to raise a fire with great difficulty, but at this time, the crisis was not completely lifted. Jack must kill all dangers in the cradle before the bounty hunters arrive. Immediately after, he took off his soaked clothes. The bullet hole on his arm was constantly sending waves of pain. In order to survive, Jack had to do something. So after gulping down a large mouthful of wine, he summoned up great courage to pour the strong wine on the wound for disinfection. And this operation directly made him feel good. He let out a cry. Subsequently, Jack shivered and put the wine bottle away and threw it aside, picked up the socks, rolled them up and put them in his mouth. To prevent himself from crying out and being discovered by the hunters, and the intense pain continuously coming from the wound made him feel torn apart, Jack kept rubbing the dagger on his pants. After making a great determination, Jack mustered up all his courage. After aligning the tip of the dagger with the wound, he forcefully pried out the bullet in his arm. Jack lay on the ground in pain after a little while of relief. In order to stop the bleeding of the wound, he inserted the knife into the fire for disinfection, and then continued to bite the sock that had just fallen. After taking a look at the wound, Jack pulled out the roasted red dagger. After a brief hesitation, he actually branded it directly. For a moment, there was a sizzling sound mixed with the smell of roasted meat. It directly made Jack howl with hunger. After doing all this, Jack fainted in the snow. But little did he know that it was precisely this move that was keenly detected by the bounty hunters. The hunters smelled a smell that didn't belong here. They quickly headed towards Jack, as if having a feeling. Jack suddenly woke up from his dream, realizing that he had wasted too much time here. He quickly dressed and walked towards the depths of the forest. But just after walking a few steps, Jack noticed something was wrong. Recently, he looked down at his footprints. In order to deceive those brutal bounty hunters, Jack carefully tiptoed and walked backwards. After returning to the base, he deliberately walked around in a circle, and then walked while sweeping with a pine branch, trying to cover up his real footprints. But soon, Jack noticed something was wrong again. Running away and being discovered was only a matter of time, so he turned to look at the towering trees, and immediately thought of a near-perfect plan in his heart. On the other side, the hunters also found Jack's trace. Looking at the messy footprints on the snow, they inferred that the other party was deliberately walking backwards, trying to confuse the real trace in order to catch Jack as soon as possible. The hunters split into 5 groups, and in order to survive, Jack hid on a big tree. Looking at the hunters slowly walking into his trap below, Jack pulled out the dagger in his arms. Then he aligned the tip of the dagger with the hunter's head below, preparing to let go as soon as the other party saw him. Fortunately, the hunter below didn't find him. Jack immediately heaved a sigh of relief. But just in this moment, the hunter found the sawdust and footprints next to the tree root.